Good evening, dear listeners, and welcome to another chilling episode of our scary stories. I am your host, drawing back the curtain to the darker corners of the world, guiding you through the eerie tales that lie in the shadows. The faint of heart beware, tonight's story is a voyage that slips through the realms of life and death, where every creak of the floorboard or flicker in the candlelight might be more than it seems. We'll embark on a journey shrouded in desperation, where a widow's quest for solace invites an uninvited terror. So turn down the lights, draw closer to the warmth, and prepare to step into a tale titled A Widow's Terrifying Encounter. The desolate silence of St. Augustine's cemetery hung heavy in the chilly spring air, a blanket of grief cast over the mourners. Emily Stewart, draped in a veil of widow's black, clung to the cold, marble headstone, her heart as heavy as the granite monument before her. The scent of damp earth mingled with the fragrant aroma of fresh lilies, a poignant reminder of the life lost. Charles Stewart, her beloved husband, lay beneath that stone. His name, chiseled into the gray slab, served as the only lingering testament of the vibrant man Emily had known and loved. The mournful cooing of a solitary dove echoed from the gnarled branches of the old oak tree standing sentinel over his grave, adding to the sorrowful symphony. The cemetery was eerily silent, except for the quiet sobs of the grieving attendees, the faint rustle of their black clothing in the cool breeze, and the pastor's sonorous voice eulogizing Charles. Emily felt the words washing over her, but they seemed to be coming from a great distance, their meanings lost in her desolation. Her gloved fingers traced the letters of Charles's name, each line etched into the stone mirroring the permanent etching of loss on her heart. She yearned to hear his voice, to exchange one last sweet word of love, but all that awaited her was a chilling silence. After the mourners dispersed, Emily lingered. The deepening twilight cast long, eerie shadows that danced on the marble graves, a haunting ballet that reflected her inner turmoil. She felt a chill creeping up her spine, the graveyard's icy fingers trying to claim her as well. Yet she wasn't ready to leave, not yet. A gnawing desperation filled her, a refusal to say goodbye to Charles, not when their parting was so sudden and incomplete. In the silence of the graveyard, under the watchful eyes of stone angels and grieving saints, she made a resolution. Emily would seek closure, a final farewell that the grave had denied her. "I will hear your voice again, Charles," she whispered into the wind, her voice resolute yet trembling. Her promise was carried away, swallowed by the shadows of the night. As she exited the cemetery, her heart heavy but her determination unwavering, she knew her next step. She would seek out Madame Sabrina, the renowned table turner. Little did she know, the desperate path she was about to tread would lead her into realms unbeknownst to most, exposing her to chilling truths she wasn't prepared to face. The moon, hanging low in the starlit sky, cast a ghostly glow over the silent graveyard as Emily embarked on her fateful journey. A journey that would pull her into the dark chasm of the unknown, where the veil between the living and the dead was thin, and where the desperate whispers of the departed awaited her. A sense of anticipation hung in the air as Emily drove through the winding roads that led her to Madame Sabrina's antiquated residence. The old Victorian mansion was situated at the end of a narrow, tree-lined lane. The sun had sunk beneath the horizon, leaving only the cold, spectral glow of the moon to illuminate the edifice, casting intricate patterns of shadow and light over its aged facade. As she ascended the stone steps to the front door, the house loomed above her, an ominous sentinel in the twilight. The eerie silence, broken only by the creaking of ancient wood and the rustle of dried leaves in the wind, served to heighten Emily's already frayed nerves. The door creaked open, and Emily was greeted by the scent of aged novels and burning sage, a potent blend that seemed to cling to the very walls of the mansion. Madame Sabrina, adorned in robes of midnight blue, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders, extended a hand in welcome. Her piercing gaze was a mesmerizing blend of wisdom and mystery, and her voice, when she spoke, was as soothing as it was haunting. "Welcome, Mrs. Stewart," Sabrina intoned. The flickering candlelight from within the house danced in her dark eyes, adding an ethereal glow to her age-lined face. Led into a dimly lit parlor, Emily took in her surroundings. The room was a sanctum of the otherworldly. A round table draped in a crimson cloth stood at the center, encircled by a ring of unlit candles. Glass orbs glimmered in the low light, their surfaces refracting the faint luminance and casting an otherworldly sheen around the room. Emily's eyes traced the worn, faded tarot cards strewn across the table, a silent testament to countless stories of desperation and hope. As Sabrina lit the candles, the warm light flickered and danced, casting an array of wavering shadows over the table's surface, each one twisting and contorting as if yearning to break free. The table turner invited Emily to join her at the table. Emily, clutching the hem of her dress tightly, obliged. The scent of burning sage grew stronger, a sense of anticipation and unease charging the air. "I must warn you," Sabrina began, her voice filled with a solemn note, communing with the departed. "It's a path fraught with uncertainty and danger." Emily nodded her understanding, the words casting a long, chilling shadow on the path she'd chosen to tread. Her heart pounded with fear, yes, but also with a desperate hope. The séance began, Sabrina's voice weaving an enchanting tapestry of words. As she summoned Charles's spirit, the candles around the table flickered wildly. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat echoing in the uncanny silence of the room. The table beneath her fingertips began to vibrate subtly, a quiet shudder running through its wooden veins. The first tangible confirmation of the unseen, a terrifying sign of what was to come. Emily's return to her solitary home was a journey laced with trepidation. The familiar surroundings felt alien, as though she was a stranger trespassing in her own life. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, now echoed with silence that bordered on eerie. As she drifted into an uneasy slumber, the chilling memories of the séance etched in her mind's eye, she remained oblivious to the changes about to befall her peaceful abode. The peaceful silence of the night was abruptly broken by a strange, inexplicable scraping sound, causing her to stir from her restless dreams. Bleary-eyed and disoriented, she followed the noise, her bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. A chilling gust of wind, inexplicable in the closed confines of her home, caused the sheer curtains to billow like ghostly apparitions. Her heart pounded a staccato rhythm of fear and uncertainty as the scraping sound led her to the dining room. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting an ethereal glow on the antique mahogany table in the center of the room. A piece of furniture once associated with happy family meals and cheerful conversation had become the host of a chilling spectacle. Emily watched, wide-eyed and frozen, as the table trembled and shuddered, as if possessed by an unseen force. Then, with an abruptness that made her heart leap in her chest, the table ceased its movement. Her gaze fell on the tabletop. Etched into the polished surface was a chilling message. "The path is open." A cold, icy dread coursed through Emily's veins. The words seemed to pulse with a foreboding energy, hinting at a mysterious, ominous world she had inadvertently uncovered. The eerie quiet that followed was almost deafening in its intensity. Retreating to the edge of the room, Emily's mind reeled. The house that had once been her sanctuary was transforming into a conduit for messages from the departed. A fear, alien and raw, clung to her, a ghostly shroud that was her new reality. Madame Sabrina's warning echoed in her mind, sending a chill down her spine. Had her desperate desire to connect with Charles opened a pathway that was never meant to be traversed? Had her grief-stricken heart unwittingly invited the unseen and the vengeful into her home? With dawn, her home resumed its familiar appearance, the ghastly message on the table the only remainder of the night's eerie happenings. Emily knew her journey had only just begun, her home now a threshold to a phantom realm. She had sought closure, but instead, she had opened a door to the unknown, a door she was uncertain she could close. Dawn did little to dispel the eerie ambience that clung to Emily's home. The morning light shone off the polished mahogany table, emphasizing the chilling message carved into its surface. Every glance at it was a chilling reminder of the inexplicable occurrences of the previous night. Haunted by the message and its implications, Emily found herself drawn back to Madame Sabrina. The table turner's eyes held a flicker of apprehension as Emily relayed the night's event, her voice shaking, betraying the terror she felt. "The spirits have chosen to speak," Sabrina said, her voice filled with an uneasy mix of concern and fascination. "We need to tread cautiously. The path you've opened is a two-way road. You may reach Charles, but other spirits, unseen, unheard, they may reach out to you as well." Haunted by her words, Emily returned home. The day passed in a blur, the message from the spirit realm casting a shadow over her once mundane routines. As night approached, Emily found her fear mounting, her mind swirling with grim possibilities. When darkness fell, it came accompanied by another message. Emily found herself standing before the dining table, heart pounding as the furniture shuddered and groaned under an unseen force. The carved message this time read, "Look to the past." Emily was left alone with the cryptic message, her mind racing. She scanned her memory, trying to decipher the meaning of the spectral advice. As she paced the length of the house, she found herself drawn to the dusty attic, a space untouched since Charles's passing. An idea sparked in her mind. Could the spirit be leading her there? With the flickering light of a single candle illuminating her path, Emily ascended the old, wooden staircase to the attic. The air was thick with dust and the scent of old paper. As she delved into the forgotten keepsakes, each object seemed to echo with memories of the past. Hours passed unnoticed as Emily found herself drawn to an old, worn leather-bound book, a diary that belonged to Charles. As she ran her fingers over the embossed cover, a shiver ran down her spine. Could this be what the spirits guided her to? Returning to the solitude of her bedroom, Emily opened the diary. The entries, written in Charles's neat handwriting, spoke of his life before they met. As she delved deeper, a particular entry caught her attention. It spoke of an old feud, a betrayal, a vengeful enemy. A chill washed over Emily. Was this old feud somehow connected to the mysterious messages from the beyond? Had her attempt to contact Charles stirred old, unsettled ghosts? As the moon bathed the room in a spectral glow, Emily found herself standing at the precipice of a terrifying mystery. A widow turned detective, her guide, the enigmatic messages from the spirit realm. With each passing day, Emily found herself entwined deeper into the chilling mystery surrounding her husband's past. Each entry in Charles's diary revealed a new piece of the puzzle. The diary entries spoke of a man named Edward, Charles's business partner and closest friend, who had been betrayed by Charles over a business deal that had gone sour. The betrayal had cost Edward everything, and he had sworn revenge before disappearing from Charles's life. Emily couldn't shake off the feeling that Edward's vengeful spirit might be one of those trying to communicate with her. Her nights were filled with silent apprehension, waiting for the table to come alive with another cryptic message. One such night, the silence was shattered by a deafening crash. Startled, Emily found her way to the source of the noise, her heart pounding a frantic tattoo in her chest. The scene that greeted her in the living room was one of chaos. Her beloved portrait of Charles lay face down on the floor, the glass shattered into 1,000 gleaming shards that reflected the moonlight eerily. And etched into the wooden floor beneath were the words, "Retribution is due." The message was far from cryptic. It bore the cold touch of revenge, a chilling warning aimed at Charles, and by extension, Emily. A sense of dread coiled around her heart. Had she inadvertently drawn the ire of Edward's spirit? She had sought a connection with Charles, not to stir the pot of a long-forgotten feud. Once again, she found herself seeking Madame Sabrina's counsel. The table-turner's face turned pale as Emily related the night's events. "You have not only opened a pathway, but also a can of worms from the past," Sabrina warned. "You've let Edward in, and his spirit is vengeful." Back at home, Emily could feel the atmosphere had changed. The once comforting spaces of her home now felt cold and menacing. Every creak of the wooden floorboards, every flicker of the shadows, seemed to whisper threats from Edward. Haunted by Edward's message of retribution, Emily pored over Charles's diary, hoping to find a way to placate the vengeful spirit. She had desired to say her goodbyes to her beloved. Instead, she had roused a wrathful ghost from the past. As each day bled into the night, her desperation grew. Emily knew she needed to find a way to make peace with Edward, or risk her life in the wrath of the betrayed spirit. The words "retribution is due" were etched not only on her living room floor, but also in her fear-stricken heart. The name Edward hung over Emily's life like a gloomy storm cloud, a constant reminder of the specter of the past haunting her present. Charles's diary offered little in terms of making amends with Edward's vengeful spirit. His remorse over the incident was palpable in his entries, but Charles hadn't known how to reach out to Edward before his untimely death. Feeling cornered, Emily decided to take a bold step. As twilight cloaked her home in eerie shadows, she prepared for a séance. She set the stage as Madame Sabrina had shown her, candles casting a warm glow around the room, incense burning, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation. With her heart pounding, Emily called out to Edward, her voice steady but lined with fear. She apologized for Charles's betrayal, pleading for his understanding and forgiveness. As her words echoed in the silence, the room grew colder. The candles flickered violently, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The room seemed to hold its breath, and then a slow, grating sound pierced the silence. Emily watched in fearful fascination as the table moved, carving a fresh message. Not enough. Emily's heart sank. Her attempts to make peace had fallen short. She was still in the crosshairs of Edward's revenge. She looked around the room, her own home that now felt haunted and foreign. Edward's simple but chilling message echoed in her mind. It was clear he desired more than mere words of apology. Emily knew she was caught in a terrifying situation. She had unearthed an old grudge, and now, it seemed, she had to find a way to lay it to rest. There was no going back, only forward into the eerie unknown, in hopes of finding a resolution that would appease Edward's vengeful spirit. Her nights became an echo of this failed reconciliation, a repeated cycle of apologies and not enough. Each denial was a chilling reminder of the wrath she was up against. Emily felt trapped in her own home, a pawn in a game of supernatural revenge, her hopes of peaceful contact with Charles lost in the darkness. The desperation that had driven her to seek out the table turner had now taken a dangerous turn. Her home, her life, seemed to be spiraling into a phantom abyss. A chilling question haunted her: what would be enough for Edward's spirit to find peace? And would she be able to offer it before it was too late? The days following the failed reconciliation were a whirlwind of dread for Emily. Her once safe haven was now a stage for ghostly encounters that left her shivering. Each day brought with it a lingering fear of the vengeful spirit's wrath and its chilling messages. Determined to find a resolution, Emily pored over Charles's diary again. Her search led her to a forgotten entry where Charles had written about a pocket watch, a family heirloom that he had taken from Edward during the fateful betrayal. With a newfound hope, Emily started the grueling task of finding the watch. She combed through the house, rummaging through drawers, boxes, and old cabinets, each moment ticking by, increasing her desperation. Each creak of the house seemed to remind her of the impending retribution and the race against time she found herself in. Finally, her diligent search led her to a concealed safe behind a painting in Charles's study. With a trembling hand, she dialed the combination noted in his diary. The safe door creaked open to reveal a beautiful golden pocket watch. Its once polished surface was dull with neglect, but Emily could see it was the token of resolution she had been desperately searching for. That night, as moonlight filtered through the gaps in the curtains, Emily, clutching the pocket watch, called out to Edward. With a tremor in her voice, she offered the watch as a token of Charles's regret, an attempt to right the wrong that had been done years ago. The house fell eerily silent. The candles flickered. Emily felt a chill wind sweep past her as she laid the pocket watch on the table. The anticipation was suffocating, the seconds stretching into infinity, as she awaited Edward's response. The silence was broken by the slow, grating sound of the table moving, but this time it was different, less menacing, almost contemplative. After what felt like an eternity, Emily read the message, her heart pounding in her chest. Too late, but not enough. ? A sense of relief washed over Emily, albeit tinged with apprehension. The message was not one of forgiveness, but perhaps it was a step away from immediate retribution. She had managed to communicate a meaningful apology, and Edward had acknowledged it. However, the haunting reminder of it being too late sent a chill down her spine. The line between her world and the spectral realm had blurred. As Emily sat there, surrounded by flickering candlelight, she knew her journey was far from over. She had acknowledged a ghost's grudge and would now have to face the consequences of walking the spectral tightrope. With Edward's begrudging acceptance of the pocket watch, a sense of guarded relief washed over Emily. However, the disquieting atmosphere of her home refused to dissipate. The haunting echo of Edward's resentment still filled the corridors. Her nights remained filled with hushed apprehension, a reminder of the otherworldly presence still lingering within her home. Her encounters with the spirit realm had left Emily on edge. The ghostly whispers seemed to grow louder, more demanding. Messages were more frequent, their urgency reflected in the deep grooves left on the tables, floors, even the walls. They were no longer confined to Edward's wrath, but a chorus of haunting voices. Freedom, one would demand. Salvation, another would cry out. Emily could feel the desperation in each of these messages, echoing her own. These were spirits trapped between realms, their pleas a chilling reminder of the phantom door she had inadvertently opened. Emily found herself drawn back to Madame Sabrina. The table turner's eyes grew wide as Emily narrated her experiences. You have opened a way not just for Edward, but for all the unsettled spirits around. We must close the door before your home turns into a thoroughfare for the spirit world, Sabrina warned. Haunted by Sabrina's words, Emily knew she needed to act. Armed with Sabrina's instructions, Emily set forth to do what seemed impossible, close the spectral door she had inadvertently opened. As twilight fell, Emily gathered her strength. She prepared for the closing ritual, her fingers trembling as she set up the candles in a perfect circle. Incense filled the room with a thick, heady scent. She could feel the pressure in the room build, as if the spirits themselves were pushing against an unseen barrier. Drawing a deep breath, Emily began the ritual. She called out to the spirits, her voice firm yet brimming with a respect born out of fear. She acknowledged their presence, their desires, and then gently but firmly urged them to return to their realm, to find their peace there. As her voice echoed in the room, a strange calm descended. Emily felt the floor beneath her vibrate gently, almost as if the house itself was acknowledging the phantom chorus. She continued with the ritual, her words resolute, seeking to mend the tear in the ghostly fabric she had unwittingly caused. As Emily uttered the closing words of the ritual, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the candles. Darkness fell upon the room, thick and impenetrable. The silence was broken only by Emily's ragged breaths and pounding heart. After what felt like an eternity, she fumbled for the matches, her hands shaking. As she relit the candles, the room was as it was, unmarked, untouched. The only evidence of the haunting presence was her own racing heartbeat. Emily sat in the flickering candlelight, her mind reeling. Had she succeeded, or had she angered the spirits further? Only time would tell. As she moved to blow out the candles, she couldn't help but feel like a trespasser in her own home, walking a supernatural path filled with uncertainty and fear. The days following the ritual were filled with an eerie calm. Emily's home was hushed, the air almost holding its breath. The eerie messages ceased, the tables remained unmoved, and the candle flames no longer flickered with phantom gusts. It seemed as though the door had indeed closed, silencing the chorus of otherworldly voices. But the tranquility didn't last long. It wasn't the clamor of vengeful spirits that returned, but the silent, oppressive presence of one. An icy coldness permeated the house. The air tasted of melancholy, and a sense of being watched draped over Emily like a shroud. It was Edward. His spirit, it seemed, had refused to leave, clinging on to the remnants of his resentment. One night, as Emily walked down the silent hallway, she saw a flicker in the corner of her eye. Turning, she saw a faint apparition near the fireplace. It was a translucent figure, flickering like a dying candle. A shiver ran down her spine. It was Edward, his spectral form shimmering with a ghastly glow. The figure stood still, watching her with an unblinking gaze. Then slowly, he lifted an arm and pointed at the portrait of Charles hanging above the fireplace. The message was clear. His grudge still remained, tied to his old friend and partner. Emily, her heart pounding, tried to reason with the apparition. She pleaded for his forgiveness, emphasizing Charles's regret and remorse. But the figure only shook his head, his haunting form fading and reappearing like a ghastly strobe. The silence of the house was now replaced by a melancholic echo of a man's grudge. Emily found herself sharing her home with a supernatural tenant, a constant reminder of her husband's past and the mistake she had made by trying to contact him. Emily found herself living in a silent stalemate with Edward. His presence was a constant chilling reminder of the door she had opened, the unresolved past she had unearthed. She found herself longing for the warmth of her husband's spirit, the comfort she had originally sought, now replaced by the terrifying coldness of Edward. As Emily looked at the shimmering figure of Edward, she felt a surge of determination. She had initiated this chaos, and it was her responsibility to mend it. She was determined to find a resolution, not just for her but for Edward as well. Little did she know, the final confrontation was closer than she thought. Emily's resolve hardened into a palpable determination. She would face this haunting remnant of her husband's past and find a resolution that would bring peace to all, herself, Charles, and Edward. There was a sense of urgency, a pressing need to address the situation before Edward's silent grudge consumed her life entirely. Her research led her to one possible solution, the last goodbye. She learned that sometimes spirits lingered because of their unfulfilled desire for a proper farewell. It made sense. Edward's demise had been abrupt, his relationship with Charles severed on a sour note. He never had the chance to say his goodbye. Armed with this knowledge, Emily made preparations for a final seance. This time it was different. This wasn't a plea for communication or an attempt at reconciliation. It was an opportunity for closure, a final goodbye. As the twilight sky gave way to the velvet darkness of the night, Emily began. She held Charles's diary in one hand and the pocket watch in another, tangible links to the past that had once bound two friends and now held a spirit captive. She called out to Edward, her voice echoing in the chilling silence of the house. She recounted Charles's entries, his remorse, his missed opportunities to apologize, his longing to make amends even after death. Emily poured all her desperation into her words, each syllable a plea for understanding. As she reached the end, she offered the final goodbye on behalf of Charles and herself. Her words hung in the air, an emotional offering to the spirit that stood silently by the fireplace. Then something miraculous happened. The phantom form of Edward began to flicker, his figure shimmering more erratically. His previously stern expression softened. The gaze that was once filled with resentment now carried a different emotion, release. As Emily watched in silent anticipation, Edward's form began to fade. The eerie glow that once outlined his figure was dimming. And then, with a final flicker, he was gone. The oppressive cold that had inhabited the house seemed to lift. A silence fell, but it wasn't an unsettling one. It was a silence of relief, of resolution. Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had done it. She had released Edward's spirit, offered him the closure he had been yearning for. In the aftermath, Emily sat alone, the echoes of her own heartbeat filling the room. She felt a profound sadness, not just for herself but for Charles and Edward as well. They had been victims of their own mistakes, their spirits lingering long after their bodies had given up. From that day forward, Emily's home returned to its previous state of tranquility. However, the ghostly encounters had left an indelible mark. She had walked the thin line between life and death, confronted the remnants of the past, and come out on the other side, forever changed. As she moved on, she carried with her an understanding, a story of two friends bound by betrayal, an otherworldly door, and a desperate widow who found herself entangled in a past she had never been a part of. The tale of her journey served as a reminder every action has consequences, some that might even echo in the realms beyond our understanding. The spirit world had become a part of Emily's life, a chapter that was terrifying, yet enlightening. And with that, dear listeners, we draw the curtain on another episode of our scary stories. A tale of spectral echoes, a widow's journey, and the thin line separating our world from the one that lies beyond. Remember, the smallest choices can have far-reaching consequences, some that might even stretch beyond the realm of the living. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your heart steeled, and remember, the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary is often thinner than we think. This is our Scary Stories signing off for tonight.